Good evening, my friend. Tonight, I invite you to leave behind the busy thoughts of the day and travel to a peaceful place beside the sea. A place where time moves slowly. A place where the wind carries the scent of salt and wildflowers. A place where an old windmill stands quietly on a grassy hill overlooking the ocean. As you listen, allow your body to become comfortable. Let your shoulders soften. Let your jaw relax. And with each gentle breath, feel yourself drifting farther away from the worries of today. There's nowhere to go, nothing to do, nothing to solve, only a peaceful journey through a calm and sleepy world. And now, our story begins. Far beyond the crowded cities and busy roads, there was a small seaside village. The village rested beside a calm blue ocean where fishing boats floated gently on the water, and white seabirds drifted lazily through the sky. The people who lived there enjoyed simple lives. They rose with the morning sun. They worked slowly and carefully. And every evening they gathered near the harbor to watch the colors of sunset spread across the sea. Just above the village stood an old windmill. It rested on a grassy hill covered with tiny wildflowers. The windmill had stood there for many years, perhaps longer than anyone could remember. Its wooden sails turned slowly in the sea breeze. Not quickly, not noisily, only with a gentle creak and sigh. The villagers loved the windmill. Some said it brought good luck. Others believed it watched over the village while everyone slept. Children often imagined that the windmill whispered stories to the stars each night. Whether any of these tales were true did not really matter, because simply seeing the old windmill made people feel calm, and that was enough. The caretaker of the windmill was an elderly man named Thomas. Thomas had lived beside the windmill for most of his life. His small stone cottage sat nearby among lavender bushes and climbing roses. Each morning he opened the cottage windows and listened to the sea. Each afternoon he tended his garden, and every evening he climbed the windmill's narrow staircase to watch the sunset from the top. Thomas enjoyed quiet things. He enjoyed listening to the wind, watching clouds drift overhead, and sipping warm tea while reading old books. He never seemed rushed, never seemed worried. Many visitors wondered how he remained so peaceful, but Thomas always smiled and simply said, "The sea teaches patience." One summer evening, as golden sunlight shimmered across the water, a traveler arrived in the village. The traveler had spent many weeks journeying from place to place. He had crossed forests, walked along rivers, and followed winding roads through distant valleys. Though the traveler had seen many beautiful places, he felt tired. Not only tired in his body, but tired in his mind. His thoughts seemed crowded and restless. Even when he stopped to rest, his mind continued racing ahead, thinking about tomorrow, thinking about yesterday, thinking about everything at once. When he arrived at the harbor, he asked a fisherman if there was somewhere peaceful he could stay for a few days. The fisherman smiled. "There's only one place I would recommend." He pointed toward the grassy hill, the old windmill. The traveler looked up. The setting sun illuminated the windmill's wooden sails. Slowly, they turned against the orange sky. For some reason, the sight immediately made him feel lighter, and so he began walking toward the hill. The path wound gently through tall grass swaying in the evening breeze. Wildflowers danced beside the trail, crickets sang softly among the fields, and the sound of waves drifted upward from the shore below. Step by step, the traveler climbed the hill. The higher he walked, the quieter everything became. Soon he reached the cottage beside the windmill. Warm light glowed from its windows. Lavender bushes filled the air with a gentle fragrance. and sitting outside in a wooden chair was Thomas. The old caretaker looked up and smiled. "Welcome," he said warmly. "You seem as though you've traveled a long way." The traveler laughed softly. "I suppose I have?" Thomas nodded. "Then perhaps you should stay a while." The traveler gladly accepted. That evening they shared a simple meal of fresh bread, soup, and herbal tea. As darkness settled over the sea, they sat outside beneath the stars. The windmill turned slowly behind them. The traveler listened to the waves, the wind, the distant calls of seabirds returning to their nests. And for the first time in many weeks, he felt completely still. No rushing thoughts, no plans, no worries, only the peaceful rhythm of the ocean. Thomas seemed to notice. "The sea is helping already," he said quietly. The traveler smiled. Perhaps he was right. The next morning, the traveler awoke just before sunrise. The world outside was wrapped in soft shades of blue and silver. He stepped outside and breathed in the cool morning air. The sea stretched endlessly toward the horizon. Gentle waves sparkled beneath the first light of dawn. Above him, the windmill sails turned slowly. Creak, pause, creak, pause. The sound was soothing, almost musical. Thomas was already awake. He stood in the garden watering flowers. Rows of lavender, daisies, and wild roses surrounded the cottage. Tiny bees drifted lazily from bloom to bloom. "Good morning," Thomas called. "Would you like some tea?" The traveler joined him. Together they sat beneath a wooden pergola covered with climbing vines. Steam rose from their cups. Birds sang in the distance. Everything felt wonderfully unhurried. The traveler realized something unusual. Normally, he would already be thinking about what came next. Where to travel, what to accomplish, what to plan. But this morning, those thoughts felt far away. Instead, he simply watched the sunlight spread across the ocean, and somehow that felt enough. Over the following days, life settled into a peaceful routine. Each morning began with tea in the garden. Each afternoon brought slow walks along the coastline. Each evening ended beneath the stars. The traveler helped Thomas care for the windmill. They polished wooden railings, repaired small sections of the garden fence, and swept flower petals from the stone paths. None of the tasks felt difficult. There was no hurry, no pressure, only the simple satisfaction of caring for something beautiful. One afternoon, they climbed to the top of the windmill. A narrow staircase spiraled upward through the wooden structure. Sunlight streamed through the small windows. The scent of aged wood filled the air. At last, they reached the observation platform. The view was breathtaking. The sea stretched endlessly in every direction. Fishing boats appeared as tiny specks far below. The village rested peacefully beside the harbor. Fields of green and gold rolled across the countryside, and overhead, white clouds drifted slowly through the sky. The traveler stood quietly. The world seemed larger than he had ever noticed before, and at the same time, strangely gentle. Thomas leaned against the railing. "Most people spend their lives rushing," he said softly. "They hurry from one thing to another." The traveler nodded. "I know." Thomas smiled. "But the ocean never rushes." They listened to the waves far below, and the wind never rushes. The sails turned slowly, and the clouds never rush. Above them, clouds drifted lazily across the sky. The traveler watched them. For a long moment, neither spoke, because sometimes silence says everything. The traveler remained beside the windmill for many more days. At first, he had planned to stay only a night or two, then perhaps a week. But the peaceful rhythm of life on the hill made it difficult to leave. Every morning felt calm, every afternoon felt gentle, and every evening seemed wrapped in a kind of quiet magic. As the days passed, the traveler began noticing small things he might once have overlooked. The way sunlight shimmered across the sea like scattered gold. The way tall grasses swayed together when the breeze arrived. The sound of distant waves rolling softly against the shore, and the comforting creak of the windmill sails turning slowly overhead. Each sound blended into a peaceful melody, a melody that seemed designed for rest. One evening, as the sun began its ascent toward the horizon, Thomas invited the traveler on a walk. They followed a narrow path that curved around the hill. The air smelled faintly of lavender and salt. Wildflowers nodded gently beside the trail. Above them, the sky glowed with shades of orange, pink, and gold. Neither man felt the need to hurry. They walked slowly, listening, observing, simply being present. Soon they reached a small cliff overlooking the sea. A wooden bench sat there, weathered by many years of wind and ocean air. Thomas sat down. The traveler joined him. Together they watched the sunset. The sun slowly touched the horizon. Golden reflections danced across the water. Far below, waves rolled toward the shore in steady rhythms. Again and again, wave after wave, without effort, without urgency. The traveler felt his breathing naturally slow. Each breath matched the rhythm of the ocean. In, out, in, out. The colors of the sky gradually deepened. Orange became crimson, crimson became violet. Then soft shades of blue began to spread across the heavens. One by one, the first stars appeared, tiny points of light emerging from the darkness. Thomas smiled. I've watched thousands of sunsets from this hill. The traveler looked at him. Do you ever grow tired of them? Thomas chuckled softly. Never.
He gazed toward the sea. Every sunset is different. The traveler considered this. Perhaps Thomas was right. Even familiar things could feel new when viewed with patience, and patience seemed to be something this place offered in abundance. When they returned to the cottage, dusk had settled across the hill. Thomas lit several lanterns hanging outside. Warm, golden light glowed softly against the stone walls. The traveler watched as shadows danced gently among the flowers. The lantern light created a feeling of comfort, of safety, of home. Though he had only recently arrived, the traveler already felt connected to the windmill and cottage, as though some part of him had always belonged there. That night they sat outside beneath a blanket of stars. The sea breeze drifted across the hill. The lantern swayed gently, and somewhere below, waves whispered against the shoreline. Thomas poured 2 cups of warm chamomile tea. Steam curled upward into the cool night air. For a long while, neither man spoke. The silence felt natural, comfortable, peaceful. The traveler looked up. The night sky seemed endless. Thousands of stars sparkled overhead. More stars than he had ever seen in the city. More stars than he could count. They stretched from one horizon to the other, a river of light flowing across the darkness. The traveler felt wonderfully small, not insignificant, simply part of something much larger, something ancient and calm. The same stars had watched over sailors, farmers, travelers, and dreamers for countless generations. And tonight, they watched over him. The realization brought an unexpected sense of peace. He no longer felt the need to carry every burden alone. The universe seemed vast enough to hold them. The stars seemed patient enough to listen, and the sea seemed willing to carry away every worry. Later that night, the traveler settled into his room inside the cottage. The room was simple: a wooden bed, a small bookshelf, a comfortable chair beside the window, and a soft wool blanket folded neatly at the foot of the bed. He opened the window slightly. Cool ocean air drifted inside. The distant sound of waves filled the room. Far above, the windmill sails continued their slow turning, creak, pause, creak, pause. The sound was soothing, predictable, gentle. As he lay in bed, the traveler listened. The wind, the sea, the windmill. Together they created a peaceful rhythm, a lullaby written by nature itself. His eyelids grew heavy. His thoughts became slower, softer. Soon sleep carried him away, and for the first time in many months he slept deeply. The next morning arrived wrapped in mist. A thin blanket of fog floated above the sea. The hill appeared dreamlike, soft, quiet, almost magical. The traveler stepped outside and found Thomas sitting on the porch. A kettle rested nearby. 2 cups waited on the table. Thomas smiled. "I thought you might join me." The traveler accepted a cup of tea. The warmth felt pleasant in the cool morning air. Together they watched the mist drift across the ocean. Everything seemed slower than usual. Even the waves moved with gentle grace. The traveler found himself appreciating the quiet, not trying to fill it, not trying to escape it, simply enjoying it. He realized that silence was not empty. It was full of small wonders, the rustle of leaves, the distant cry of a seabird, the whisper of grass moving in the breeze, the sound of his own breathing. All of it had been there before. He had simply been too busy to notice. That afternoon, clouds gathered above the sea. Gray and silver shapes drifted across the sky. A gentle rain soon began to fall. Not a storm, just a peaceful shower. Soft droplets tapped against the cottage roof. The garden glistened. The flowers seemed brighter. The grass appeared greener. Thomas and the traveler remained indoors. A fire crackled quietly in the stone fireplace. The room filled with warmth and the scent of cedar wood. Thomas retrieved an old book from a shelf. Its cover was worn from years of use. He settled into a chair and began reading. The traveler sat nearby, listening to the rain, listening to the turning pages, listening to the fire. The hours passed peacefully. Neither felt the need to rush. The rain continued its gentle song. Tap, tap, tap against the windows. The traveler closed his eyes for a moment. The combination of rain, firelight, and ocean sounds created a feeling of complete comfort. The sort of comfort that invites rest. The sort of comfort that allows every muscle to relax, every thought to soften, every worry to drift away. Outside, the sea breathed steadily. Inside, the fire glowed warmly, and the old windmill continued standing watch above the shore, just as it had for many years, just as it would for many years to come, a quiet guardian beside the sea.
Always patient, always calm, always reminding anyone who visited that life was not meant to be rushed. Sometimes the greatest gift is simply slowing down, listening, breathing, and allowing yourself to rest. As the days continued to pass, the traveler found himself changing in quiet ways. Not dramatic ways, not sudden ways, but gentle ways. The kind of change that happens so slowly that you barely notice it at first. His shoulders no longer felt tense. His thoughts no longer raced from one worry to another. The constant feeling of needing to hurry had begun to fade. Instead, he moved through each day with a calmness that seemed to come naturally on the hill beside the sea. Each morning began with the same peaceful routine. The sound of distant waves, the scent of fresh ocean air, the slow turning of the windmill sails overhead, and tea shared with Thomas beneath the soft morning sunlight. The traveler found comfort in the simplicity of these moments. There was nothing extraordinary about them, yet somehow they felt more valuable than many of the grand adventures he had experienced during his travels. Perhaps peace was not found in extraordinary things. Perhaps peace was hidden inside ordinary moments. One evening, after a particularly beautiful sunset, Thomas invited the traveler to climb the windmill once again. The sky was beginning to darken. The first stars appeared overhead. Lanterns glowed softly around the cottage below. The two climbed the winding staircase, step by step, slowly, comfortably, until they reached the very top. The sea stretched endlessly beneath the moonlight. Silver reflections danced across the water. Far away, fishing boats carried tiny lanterns that shimmered like floating stars. The village below rested quietly. Most windows glowed with warm golden light. Families were finishing their evening meals. Children were preparing for bed. The entire coastline seemed wrapped in a blanket of calm. The traveler leaned against the railing. A cool breeze brushed gently across his face. For a long while, neither man spoke. Finally, the traveler broke the silence. "Thomas," he said softly, "what is the secret of this place?" The old caretaker smiled. "The secret?" The traveler nodded. "Everyone who comes here seems calmer." Thomas looked out toward the sea. His eyes reflected the moonlight. After a moment, he answered, "There is no secret." The traveler laughed quietly. "There must be." Thomas shook his head. "The windmill doesn't create peace." He gestured toward toward ocean. "The sea doesn't create peace." Then he placed a hand gently on his chest. They simply helped people remember that peace was already here. The traveler thought about those words. Already here, not somewhere far away, not waiting in the future, not hidden behind success or achievement. Already here, inside every quiet breath, inside every peaceful moment, inside every gentle pause. The realization settled over him like a warm blanket. And somehow, it felt true. That night, the moon rose high above the sea. The traveler remained outside long after Thomas had gone to sleep. He sat alone on the hill, surrounded by wildflowers, listening to waves, watching stars. The windmill turned slowly behind him. Creak, pause, creak, pause. The familiar sound felt comforting now, like the voice of an old friend. The hill glowed softly beneath moonlight. Tiny fireflies drifted through the grass. Their golden lights flickered gently among the flowers, one moment visible, the next moment hidden. The traveler watched them dance through the darkness. There was something magical about their slow movements. No rush, no destination, simply drifting wherever the night breeze carried them. Above him, countless stars sparkled across the sky. The Milky Way stretched overhead like a river of light. The ocean reflected the moon reflected the ocean, and everything felt connected. The traveler closed his eyes. The sounds of the night surrounded him. The distant sea, the whispering wind, the turning sails, the singing crickets. Together they formed a peaceful symphony, a lullaby for the world. Days eventually became weeks, and though the traveler knew he could not remain forever, he no longer felt anxious about the future. When the time came to continue his journey, he would go. When the time came to rest, he would rest. For now, this moment was enough, and that understanding brought him great comfort. One morning, as sunrise painted the horizon with shades of gold and rose, the traveler stood beside the windmill and gazed toward the sea. The ocean was calm, the sky was clear, the village below was beginning to wake. Thomas joined him. The old caretaker carried 2 cups of tea. As always, they stood together quietly, watching the day begin. Finally, Thomas smiled. "You seem different." The traveler laughed softly.
Thomas nodded. The sea has been teaching. The traveler smiled. Yes, it had. Not through words, not through lessons, but through stillness, patience, and gentle repetition. Wave after wave, sunrise after sunrise, night after night. The sea had shown him that peace does not need to be chased. It only needs to be noticed. That evening, the traveler packed his belongings. Only a few simple things. A journal, a blanket, a small wooden keepsake Thomas had carved for him. The next morning, he would continue his travels, yet he felt no sadness, because he knew something important. The peace he had found beside the windmill was not limited to this place. He could carry it with him into forests, across mountains, through busy towns, and wherever life might lead. The windmill had helped him remember something he had forgotten: how to slow down, how to breathe, how to listen, how to simply be. As night settled across the hill for the final time, the traveler walked one last path around the windmill. The lanterns glowed softly. The flowers swayed gently. The ocean whispered below. Above him, the stars shone brighter than ever. Everything felt calm. Everything felt safe. Everything felt exactly as it should be. The traveler paused and looked once more at the old windmill. Its sails turned slowly in the moonlight. Steady, patient, peaceful. Just as they always had, and just as they always would. The wind continued its gentle song. The waves continued their endless rhythm. The stars continued their silent watch across the heavens. And somewhere in the distance, a seabird called softly into the night. The traveler smiled. Then he closed his eyes for a moment, breathing in the cool ocean air, breathing out every remaining worry, feeling completely at peace. And now, dear listener, imagine yourself sitting on that quiet hill beside the sea, the old windmill turning slowly above you, the stars shining softly overhead, the waves rolling gently onto the shore below. Feel the cool breeze. Feel the comfort of the night. Feel your body becoming heavier, more relaxed, more peaceful. Allow every muscle to soften. Allow every thought to drift away like clouds crossing the sky. There's nowhere you need to go, nothing you need to do. Only rest, only comfort, only sleep. The sea continues its gentle rhythm. The windmill continues its quiet turning, and the stars continue watching over the peaceful coast. As your breathing becomes slower and your eyelids become heavier, allow yourself to drift. Drift peacefully, drift comfortably. Drift toward the deep and restful sleep waiting for you. And there, beside the old windmill by the sea, everything is calm. Everything is quiet. Everything is peaceful. Good night, and sleep well.